Imagine a spy, not the suave, bulletproof hero of fiction, but a quiet, unassuming man. He possessed no martial skills, no background in espionage, and no connection to any intelligence service. Yet, this one man, operating from a shoddy apartment, with nothing but a pen and a typewriter, managed to create an army. A vast, invisible army of 24 agents who existed only in his head. This phantom network, born of sheer audacious ambition, fooled the entire Nazi high command. It convinced Adolf Hitler of a lie so monumental that it single-handedly secured the success of the D-Day landings. His real name was Juan Pujol Garcia, but history remembers him by his two code names, Arabelle, given to him by the Germans, who showered him with praise and the Iron Cross, and Garbo, given by the British, who recognized his brilliant theatrical genius. Garbo was the ultimate double agent, the master of controlled chaos, and the most successful liar of the Second World War. This is the story of how a disillusioned Catalan civilian became the one man who rewrote the script for the invasion of Europe, achieving more with fabricated reports than thousands of troops could with bullets and steel. His war was fought not in the trenches, but in the dark, intricate corners of the human mind. And his ultimate victory was convincing a superpower to look the wrong way at the most important moment in modern history. Juan Pujol Garcia was an unlikely spy. Born in Barcelona in 1912, he was a mild-mannered man who inherited a chicken farm. His real inheritance, however, was a deep, visceral hatred of extremism, forged in the brutal crucible of the Spanish Civil War. Pujol served on both sides, first, unwillingly, in the Republican Army, and later, reluctantly, under Franco's nationalists. This dual experience gave him a unique perspective. He saw firsthand the devastating folly of both fascism and communism, and it solidified his resolve. When the next great European conflict began, he would fight for peace, democracy, and freedom. As World War II dawned, he found himself in a neutral country, Portugal, and determined to help Britain. He believed that the survival of Britain was the survival of liberty. But here began his first great challenge, convincing British intelligence that he was useful. Pujol approached the British embassy in Madrid, then Lisbon, over and over, offering his services as a spy. He was turned away repeatedly. The British saw an overly keen civilian with no training, no contacts, and a shaky history. They dismissed him as a harmless fanatic. But Pujol was not a man to be deterred by a simple refusal. If the British wouldn't hire him to spy for them, he would spy for the Germans, and then he would use the Germans to spy for the British. This was the genesis of a plan so audacious, so utterly unprecedented, that it could only be pulled off by a man convinced of his own destiny. Pujol made contact with the German Abwehr in 1941, successfully presenting himself as a zealous pro-Nazi, Spanish government official traveling to London on duty. The Abwehr, desperate for intelligence from Britain, immediately offered him training and a large expense budget. They gave him the codename Arabelle. The irony was magnificent. Here was the greatest counterintelligence operation of the war, being entirely run by a spy who the Allies had rejected. Pujol's immediate task was to report from London, but he was still stuck in Lisbon. His solution was pure invention. Using tourist guides, railway timetables, maps of Britain, and vague reports overheard in Lisbon hotels, Pujol began crafting his first intelligence reports. He became a master of the plausible fabrication. He detailed troop movements in England, described naval installations, and painted a vivid picture of life under the Blitz, all while living hundreds of miles away in Portugal. His reports were filled with minor, convincing errors that only a foreigner pretending to be in England would make. For instance, he once described traveling to Glasgow and being unable to find an Italian restaurant, a glaring absurdity in a city known for its large Italian community. He even mistakenly reported the inhabitants of Liverpool having no moral scruples, a detail he likely took from some outdated stereotype. The Germans, trusting their zealous agent, bought it all. They believed his descriptions were proof of genuine observation and paid him handsomely, even requesting he start recruiting his own network of subagents. This was the critical juncture. Pujol had established trust with the enemy. Now, he needed to get to England to make the deception truly airtight. He made contact with the British again, showing them the money, the secret inks, and the travel documents the Abwehr had provided. Finally, in April 1942, MI5, British counterintelligence, was forced to admit their mistake. They smuggled Pujol and his wife to London and gave him a new codey name, one that acknowledged his theatrical genius and his ability to hold their attention. Garbo, once in London, under the close supervision of his handler, Thomas Harris, Garbo's operation exploded in complexity. Harris, a brilliant painter and counterintelligence officer, immediately recognized the artistic scope of Garbo's deception. The two men formed one of the most remarkable partnerships of the war, working from a flat in London to manage a vast, imaginary empire. Garbo needed a network, the Phantom Army the Abwehr had paid for. He delivered over the next 2 years. He invented 27 distinct sub-agents, each with a complex backstory, personality, and area of expertise. There was Pilot, an employee of the RAF in Ottawa, Isolde, a passionate Welsh nationalist who hated the English, the Venezuelan businessman who supplied ship manifests, and a Galligan sailor who sent reports from the port of Glasgow. Garbo and Harris had to manage this sprawling network of fictional characters like a complex, long-running theatrical production. They had to invent personal problems for them, a sub-agent who died of pneumonia, another who needed emergency dental work, and another who required a new, fake ID. The Germans, so invested in their prize agent, sent condolences, money, and even supplies, grieving the loss of agents who never existed. The brilliance of the Garbo system lay in the controlled failure. To ensure the Germans maintained absolute trust, Garbo would occasionally send intelligence that was technically accurate but deliberately too late to be acted upon. For example, he might report that a large Allied convoy had left Liverpool, a report that was true, but only arrived at Abwehr headquarters after the convoy was already halfway across the Atlantic. This technique was genius. It gave the Germans a taste of success. They confirmed the report was true, but the delay prevented them from acting, allowing the Allies to proceed with their plans unimpeded. The Germans never blamed Garbo for the delays. They blamed the incompetence of their own postal system or radio operators. The cost of this elaborate charade was immense, requiring Pujol to type out thousands of letters, often inventing entire families, love interests, and grievances for each subagent. The dedication to this gargantuan task was absolute. While you're marveling at the sheer psychological stamina required to maintain this deception, don't forget to tap that like button. It helps us bring more untold stories of war heroes right to your screen. The entire sprawling architecture of the Garbo deception was built for one specific purpose: Operation Fortitude, the massive deception plan leading up to D-Day. The Allies knew that the success of the Normandy landings depended entirely on one factor: convincing the Germans that the invasion was coming somewhere else and making them hold back their powerful armored reserves. That somewhere else was the Pas-de-Calais, the narrowest point between Britain and France. Garbo was the star of the show. For months leading up to June 1944, Garbo's entire network of 27 phantom agents was mobilized to feed the Abwehr mountains of evidence about the completing existence of the completely fictitious 1st United States Army Group. This Phantom Army, commanded by the fearsome General George S. Patton, was supposedly preparing to invade Pas-de-Calais. Garbo was meticulous. He sent detailed reports on FUSAG's fake headquarters, their non-existent training exercises in southeast England, and even fabricated complaints from his agents about the heavy concentration of troops and equipment in Kent. The Germans absorbed every detail. Their faith in Arabelle was so complete that they ignored the photographic evidence gathered by their own aerial reconnaissance, which showed the true invasion preparations in the southwest. If Arabelle said the main force was in Kent, it had to be true. The pinnacle of Garbo's achievement came on June 5, 1944. As the real invasion armada sailed for Normandy, Garbo sent his final, most critical message to his German handlers: "I cannot delay sending report of concentration of forces. Their target must be imminent." The Germans, already in a state of high alarm, received this final confirmation just hours before the landings began. But the final, crushing blow came after the landings on June 6. The German High Command knew an invasion was happening, but they still believed it was a diversion. The key was to keep the elite panzer divisions stationed at Pas-de-Calais. On D-Day morning, the Abwehr received an urgent message from Garbo. In it, he stated that while the landings in Normandy were a genuine push, they were merely a feint designed to draw out the panzer divisions, allowing the real invasion force to land at Pas-de-Calais. Garbo urged them not to move their reserves. This was the moment of truth. Hitler himself received and believed the intelligence from his prized agent, Arabelle. He issued an order. The panzer divisions would stay put. They remained in the Pas-de-Calais for weeks after D-Day, waiting for an invasion that would never come. This delay was catastrophic for the German war effort and gave the Allied forces the crucial breathing room they needed to secure their beachheads and establish a foothold in Europe. Garbo's lie had worked. He didn't just save lives. He won the battle for France before a single tank had moved inland. The story of Juan Pujol Garcia is a testament to the power of human ingenuity and the effectiveness of psychological warfare. His impact was unprecedented. For his services to the Third Reich, he was awarded the Iron Cross, second class, in a magnificent ceremony where his handler praised his loyalty. For his services to the Allies, he was later awarded the Member of the Order of the British Empire. To this day, he is one of the only people in history to receive high honors from both sides during the same war, one side for his loyalty, the other for his complete and utter betrayal. After the war, facing the very real threat of Nazi retribution, Garbo staged his own death in 1949, complete with a faked medical certificate claiming he had died of malaria in Angola. He disappeared, settling quietly in Venezuela, where he ran a small bookstore and souvenir shop. For decades, the world believed him dead. His existence was only revealed in 1984 by historian Nigel West, just in time for Garbo to participate in the 40th anniversary of D-Day. Finally emerging from the shadows to accept the admiration he was due, Garbo proved that the most important weapons in a war are not necessarily bombs or battleships, but the ability to control perception and to master the fine art of deception. His legacy is one of supreme confidence, unwavering dedication to a cause, and the brilliant, beautiful audacity of a lie so perfect that it altered the course of history. He was the man who fooled Hitler, and his story remains the gold standard for the quiet, brilliant heroes of espionage.